So with that in mind, is the election a factor for where treasuries go, you think?
Elections are always factors. Like, I'm never going to sit here and say election's not a factor.
Do you think it's a factor in today's sell-off?
Yes, it's a factor. I think people look at last night's debate and they will exaggerate the effect that it will have, and they'll exaggerate what they think a candidate can or cannot get done. I think that when you start understanding the reality of how difficult it is to change policy, you might reflect differently. But the knee-jerk reaction coming out of last night's debate, and I don't care which side you're on, whichever candidate you support, you'll have this knee-jerk reaction. Well, my policy is going to look like this, and we're going to get it done. I think there are a lot of people that are having those reactions today, and I think that's very far from the reality of getting legislation and getting laws passed and ending up with a new economic environment or a new tax environment or a new regulatory environment or a new tariff environment.
You're pointing to one line of thought today, and that is that a near certain take of the Senate by Republicans is going to be a check on any President Harris, yes?
Yes. Look, I sit here today believing that the Senate, there's a very high probability, let's put it this way, nothing's certain. There's a very high probability that the Senate goes Republican. And even if Ms. Harris wins the presidency, she will have to get Republican votes to change tax policy. I don't think Republicans are lining up to vote for higher corporate taxes. I don't think they're lining up to vote for tax on unrealized gains. I don't think they're lining up to vote for a lot of increases in capital gains taxes. There probably are some compromises in the middle. When I was involved in taxes, 7 years ago, there were compromises in the middle. There were places where the Democrats would have met the Republican Party. So there's always a place for a deal to get done. But I think on the big philosophical issues that may be market moving today, I don't think there's a deal to be done on those big issues. If we're talking about 1 or 2% on the corporate tax, we're not going to argue about 1 or 2% on the corporate tax. But if you're talking about massive moves that make us non-competitive with the rest of the world, I think there's a large argument. And the rest of the world, corporate taxes, are in the low 20%. It's 21 to 23% is where we compete with the OECD. Once you get over 23%, we become non-competitive with the rest of the world.
So given that reality, is it clear to get a picture of what a Harris administration and economy would look like versus a Donald Trump administration and economy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, the one thing I know from last night is she has a plan.
Right, we didn't get the details.
I know she has a plan,
yes.
Okay? She has a plan. So I know she has a plan. I don't know what's in her plan. The only thing I know for certain in her plan is that she wants to give out $50,000 for small businesses. I don't know what that is. Is that a one-time tax to start a business? Because, by the way, if it is, I want to see that business that has $50,000 of tax liability in year one.
This is Kramer.
I've been unable to invest in that business so far that has $50,000 of taxable income in year one. I know that she wants to give $25,000 for first-time home buyers, which to me is just inflation in the home market, because now you can afford $25,000 more homes, and we know there's a scarcity of home. And I know she wants to enhance the child tax credit, but there's a lot of details in what that means. So far, I've seen the plan of 3 stimulus packages, which I think looks very similar to what the Biden-Harris team did earlier with stimulus packages, which led us to an inflationary economy. But that's maybe only part of the plan.
There's a federal price gouging ban in there as well.
Right. So we're going to put more money in the economy chasing products, then we're going to limit the amount of products that we have. So we're going to create demand and limit supply.
On the other side, tariffs, not necessarily friendly to growth or inflation either.
I agree with that. I think there is a use for tariffs, and we should use tariffs when effective, and we should not use tariffs as a consumption tax.
Which is sort of, I mean, she used the word sales tax. He said it's not a sales tax. It's going to be paid for by other governments and by other nations' companies.
So Sarah, look, we should talk about this. So to the extent that we manufacture a good in this country, like an electric vehicle, we've got Ford and GM that have spent an enormous amount of time and energy and employ a lot of Americans manufacturing what I would consider to be a fairly priced electric vehicle in the $30,000 range, $30,000 to $40,000 range. We should not allow a foreign country where the company they're competing against does not have a cost of capital, does not pay a living wage, they do not care about the environment. We should not allow them to import an electric vehicle into this country and undersell American manufacturing. That is where a tariff is unbelievably effective to make sure that they are not dumping those products in this country. So I highly support the use of a tariff in that situation where we're protecting American jobs. On the flip side, if we don't manufacture something in this country, and we have no plans to manufacture it in this country, and we as American consumers maybe need it and can't live without it, like a pharmaceutical, or we really want it because it's a baby stroller or a car seat, and we really can't live without it, and we don't manufacture it in the United States, and we're not going to manufacture it anytime soon because it's extruded aluminum, and extruding aluminum is not a very clean process, and that got exported overseas, and we're never going to do it in this country. We should not tariff that because that would be a tax on our consumer, and therefore it would just cost our economy and be inflationary. So I do think the use of tariffs and the ability for a president to have it in his or her back pocket is important. It's a very good lever in negotiating, but you have to understand where it's effective. It's effective when we're protecting U.S. industries and we're protecting U.S. jobs.
Do you think he gets that?
I do. I think at the end of the day he does. I think you played the Jan Hatzius piece earlier. Jan and I don't always agree on a lot of things, but I think he as well agrees that they're going to use tariffs selectively. I think that's where most of us come down. Threatening to use tariffs is one thing. Actually implementing them is another.